Right, ready? You feeling the pressure?
Yeah, a little bit.
Right, ready?
That was some strike, that.
What did you think?
Gary, thanks for coming on my show. I'm really, really happy to have you on my show. Can you tell?
Yeah, I'm happy to be on
I'm really happy. This is...
Congratulations on... did you win this show?
I won it. We had a penalty strikeout and I was victorious, yeah. Anyway, look, thanks for coming on. We actually are in football goals, but I will talk to you a bit about football, but I also want to talk to you a bit about your career and also about politics, because you are quite politically engaged. And I've noticed it because we've interacted a bit on Twitter and you're quite into politics and you're really clued up on what's going on. But I wanted to start and just ask you about Ukraine, because people on both the left and right have spoken about how Ukraine's provided a moment of clarity, about a reminder, if you like, of what our fundamental values are. Have you felt that as well?
I think so. I think one of the reasons over the last 4 or 5 years that I've probably become more politically engaged has been because of the weak leadership, not just in this country, my disappointment in the leadership in this country, but also internationally. Obviously Brexit and the fact that we've been separated from our European friends, our neighbours, people who we respect and love us, who we should have a strong relationship with, and also the US, obviously the Trump administration, which again was, in my mind, farcical. And so what we've seen is basically over the last 4 or 5 years, a weaker West that's, I think, been exploited in the last few weeks, and the Ukrainian people suffer for it. Out of the Ukrainian suffering comes a strengthened West where people, we've recognised that actually we are on the same side, that we should work together, we need to collaborate, we need to make sure that we unify, and but it shouldn't need what's happening in Ukraine at the moment for that to happen.
But there's always been that sort of old cliche about sports and politics not mixing. It seems a bit hollow now, doesn't it? Because the two things have completely bled into each other, haven't they, in recent days over Ukraine and the sanctions and also kind of what's happened in terms of sporting events and Russia being excluded?
I think I've always felt that sport should rise above politics and even international crises that happen. However, I think I'm wrong. I've always welcomed international money into Premier League football. Yeah. I've always felt that we should welcome the Saudi Arabian money, the UAE money, the Russian money, and that we should try and, through football and through sport, create what would be a better collaborative working relationship, improve conditions for the populations of these countries, which in large part they do suffer, and they don't always have the freedom and the democracies that and the choices that we have. However, I have to say that's been tested enormously in this last few weeks with what's happened with Chelsea, with Abramovich, with the Ukraine war, the connections between Abramovich and Putin. Government have obviously closed Chelsea down effectively at this moment in time, other than the fact they can play football matches. My long-held view that football and sport should try and welcome this international money in, I feel a lot weaker on that opinion today.
I was going to ask you about that, Gary, actually, because on March the 1st, I had a look, you did an FT, Financial Times Football Summit, and you said you wouldn't have kicked Abramovich out of English football, and you actually said he broke the old elite because he brought new money in and he broke the kind of top tier and he kind of got sort of Chelsea in. That was on March the 1st. It's what, now March the 17th. Do you, even now, do you think actually you misjudged that or you've changed your view?
I think what I was saying in that particular interview is I welcome the competitive nature, the competitive change in English football. The idea of Manchester United, Arsenal and Liverpool being the traditional elite, always being at the top, always having the most money. I like the idea of the fact that they've been challenged by Manchester City, Newcastle now, obviously Blackburn historically with Jack Walker, who was a local businessman, and obviously Roman Abramovich's Chelsea. I believe they've added to the Premier League's global appeal, the competitive landscape of the game in this country, the quality of the football that we see, but at what cost? At what cost? And I have to say I've always welcomed it. I welcome international investment into cities, but then I think the line has been crossed, and it's obviously been crossed in the last few weeks.
So you sort of see it as a moment of reckoning for English football now?
Absolutely a moment of reckoning. I don't think the Premier League can continue to bury their heads in the sand and feel as though, I mean, at the moment we don't even know where the Premier League stand on these big issues at times. They waited for the government to act before they suspended Roman Abramovich as a director. He'd almost already had the club taken off him at that point.
Yeah.
The Premier League, it's chasing them down the street. The issues around independence, transparency, fit and proper owners tests, redistribution of funds, looking after grassroots football, they can continue to ignore it, but it's coming for them. And I think this crisis in the last few weeks has made it incredibly difficult for them to ignore that there's got to be a better way forward. You know, you're talking about some of the richest businessmen in the world, states in the world now not owning English football clubs, which I say it's made it such a competitive game, it's made it a brilliant game, but it's been basically, it's happening without control, without independence and without transparency. And our game in this country is far too important for deals to be done. We still don't know how Saudi Arabia were accepted into this country as a football club owner. We have no idea. We know that they're in. We know that they met the criteria, but no one knows what the criteria is.
And you would have seen yesterday that the Chelsea boss, Thomas Tuchel, made that point. Why is it right for Chelsea to be punished over Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but Newcastle have not been punished given that Saudi Arabia are involved in a war in Yemen? I mean, there is a contradiction there, isn't there?
You're absolutely right. And I say I'm happy to say that I've been wrong on this particular issue. I think it's taken the Ukraine war for me to recognise that we cannot accept money into football in this country that is tainted. And there's no doubt that we have done.
So, Gary, following on from that, do you think that it should be right that the Premier League asks owners to sign declarations supporting human rights, or there's an independent regulator that checks these things before people are allowed to buy clubs? Like, there should be more regulation of the sector now?
Well, 100%. I've been calling for an independent regulator for 2 or 3 years, and that has to come in. That has to be a priority, because there is a crisis in English football every 10 minutes. You know, whether it be Derby County, whether it be the Super League project, whether it be Abramovich in the last few weeks, there is no way that the Premier League have proven that they're not fit and proper and they're not capable of demonstrating the leadership that's needed in English football. So that will change. I think just generally, this is a wake-up call, I think, for all football clubs, associations, organisations, that we can't just separate ourselves from the political and social issues that are surrounding us. We are intertwined in it because of the ownership structures that exist in English football at this moment in time.
Well, look, Gary, let's come on to talking about you and your sort of interaction between football and politics, and also just all your business interests. So let's kick off with, you know, I've been reading a lot about you. The two things that have really struck me is you're very busy and you're very driven.
Generally,
you're a TV expert, you're a social media influencer, you own hotels, you're a restaurateur, you're a football club owner, you set up a university, you've just joined the Labour Party, and you get up at 4:30 a.m. and your motto is attack the day. There's this relentlessness about you. I mean, for a start, how do your family cope with it?
They don't really. They ignore me at times and just let me get on with it. Actually, it's the name of my business, Relentless. It's my favourite word in the world, because I don't think it does stop. I think that you have an opportunity in life, you're here for a very short period of time. I think you go for it, you attack the day, you make every moment count. I wasn't born like that. It's my parents, my upbringing, my coaches, my manager at Manchester United, surrounded by brilliant people who set the right example. And we have two choices when we wake up every single day. We're either going to go for it and try our very best and not give in, or the opposite of that. And for me, there's only one way to go. You set up a university. You have a business. I mean, you manage 600 people. I mean, you're a serious businessman, aside from all of your other interests around football. But you have said that when you're 50, which is in 3 years' time, it's the next phase of your life. It seems to me, from observing you a bit, it's a question of if not when you get into politics. Is that fair? I don't think so. I mean, I joined the Labour Party. I wanted to. I felt compelled to. Why
did you feel compelled to?
Real disappointment with the existing government. We have to be better than that. We have to be better than that. And I think in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's absolutely right that, you know, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, the SNP, people who comment on sort of what would be political situations have backed off, because it's important that we have unity at this moment in time, that we concentrate and focus on what's needed in Ukraine and support those people and not, if you like, let politics get in the way of it. However, the baton has just been placed on the floor. It needs picking up again.
Do you think that the Conservative Party should have a policy now that they don't accept any money from Russian donors unless it's someone that's opposed to the Putin regime.
I mean, they've laundered the money through this city for the last 10 years. They've poisoned people on our streets. They've invested into our current serving government party. I'd suggest that that's something that doesn't need to be said. I mean, we need to be very light on this at this moment in time because it takes away from the focus of making sure that Boris Johnson, who, to be fair, doesn't need much to distract him, but at this moment in time he needs to focus wholly on Ukraine and making sure he makes the right decisions. That's why I'm leaving off him. That's why.
So you don't think he should resign at the moment?
At this moment in time, I would say that ultimately there needs to be a focus completely on him doing his job, which is supporting the British government in making sure that everything that needs to happen in Ukraine happens. However, the second that hopefully this crisis is over or it subsides, he needs to leave because he is a danger to our country. The standards that, we have got zero credibility in Europe and around the world. We need a government who can rebuild our relationships and our standards.
Gary, I mean, just to be clear, the government would contest that, but
of course they would.
Just to be clear though, I mean, you're so sort of, you have this, but you have a very visceral dislike for Boris Johnson, but you also have this very public role as a kind of leading footballing star and commentator. Do you ever get blowback from fans that don't like it? Because millions of people voted for Boris Johnson.
Of course I
do.
And
they don't like you talking about
this. Absolutely, and absolutely. And I've got they're smart operators. I've no doubt that when they say get Brexit done and when they say get levelling up, it's hitting home because they've got data behind them to support it. They socially engineer our minds. We've got to get back to what's important in this country. I accept millions of people have voted for him. I'm hopeful that Brexit was a big part of that, and that ultimately the also weakness of the opposition. But I'd like to think in 2 years' time that we have a better place to go to in terms of leaders. I'm
going to ask you two more things. So one, just going back to politics, I want to pin you down a bit. What about running education for the government under a Labour government, cabinet minister?
Do you know something? I'm really passionate about education.
I know you. I mean, you.
I'm really passionate about education because I do believe it should be the heart. Health and education should be at the heart of every government policy.
So you would maybe want to be an MP and a cabinet minister and actually.
I love the idea of having an influence in education and set up a university. When I see 2 weeks ago that this current government have gone out to consultation to remove student loans from students who don't achieve a C at GCSE level in English and maths, it breaks my heart. 20 to 25% of students in this country currently go to university without an English and maths level C at GCSE level. Subjects like PE, sports science, subjects like in the digital sector where many of the current jobs exist, you would be excluding people from disadvantaged backgrounds, low-income families, because that's it. They are not ordinarily the students who don't have that. We've got to change the way in which we look at education in this country.
So it seems to me that you don't want to do the mayoral race, but what I'm hearing is someone that does want to dedicate their life even more to public service because you've done a lot already. But
that doesn't necessarily have to be through being an MP or necessarily through sort of being in public office because I do like the idea of my freedom. I like the idea of what I do in Manchester with regards to the business.
But you definitely seem attracted to it.
Do you know something? I want to have a positive impact on the people that I'm sort of come into contact with. I really feel passionate about the opportunity that I was given as an 18-year-old by a great manager who looked at me equally as one of the experienced players in the team, and I think that everybody in this country...
You were a leader. You led the youth team. You captained Man U. You can't help it. It's kind of in you, isn't it? It seems to me like it is.
Look, I love. I want everyone to have the best opportunity that they can. It sounds really sort of twee, but the fact of the matter is, I'm really struggling with look at the Chancellor, Beth.
Yeah.
He's worth £500 million. He wakes up one morning and he says, I'm going to lend people in this country who are desperately trying to afford their energy bills £200. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to make them pay me back over 5 years at £40 a year. I don't want that type of guy.
But the only way you change it is if you go into politics, Gary.
I know, but that's honestly, I think sometimes I can have more influence with my Twitter following now than I can.
You have got 5 million followers.
I'd probably have to be quiet if I went into and being an MP. But that guy there's made that decision.
I'm definitely taking away from this interview that you're not ruling it out.
I'm not ruling it out, but I'm also definitely not ruling it in.
Yeah.
But I do see some decisions that are made. We have MPs at this moment in time who vote for children in the first wave of a pandemic not to eat food. That really disturbs me.
OK, I'm going to ask you one final question. Who would you rather work for, Liverpool Football Club or the Conservative Party?
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Oh, he's fallen off the chair.
Oh, do you know something? I have to say, 100% Liverpool Football Club. And do you know something? You know how much I don't like them.
That's why I asked you.
I look at Jurgen Klopp, Jordan Henderson. They're the two leaders in that club at this moment in time on the football pitch and off the football pitch. They're good men. They're good people. They're honest. Let's start with that, shall we, as the basic sort of fundamentals of a leader in this country, and move away from what would be the sort of shenanigans and shambles that we've had for this last 6 months.
All right, well, Gary Neville, I suspect I'll be seeing you down in Westminster in a few years.
You just got your headline, Gary Neville wants to join Liverpool.
Well, you see what I did there. All right, thanks so much for coming on the show. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you.